Hello and welcome back to the DCPerform Podcast. This is our episode number 12. I'm Rachel Weber.
And I'm 1L Greg. And what does 12 episodes mean?
That means 1 year for DCPerform. Woohoo! Happy birthday, DCPerform Podcast.
It's been a journey, and we've got a whole another year in front of us. So we're looking forward to showing you the best of from last year and give you some insights of things that we really enjoyed doing. Thanks for joining us and continuing to support our podcast.
Hey, well, happy birthday, DCPerform Podcast.
Yes, happy birthday to all of us.
This is so fun. It's crazy. 1 year under the belt. We've come so far just with the podcast, and it's also really interesting to see how these different topics we've discussed have evolved, but really exciting day.
Exactly, and you look at the guests that we've had, the wide variety of them, the different perspectives that we've brought on. And, you know, when you think of us as being an engineering and technology innovation company for supply chain, we think of it through our lens. But what does it mean by our listeners and our guests and our customers? It's all about the end customer experience and how that capability enables it.
Yeah, so really today, just to revisit all of those different topics and themes that we've discussed and show how those have evolved, maybe noticing a few consistent themes and how that's developed over time, and then also really just thinking back about how these different industries are playing different roles in the customer experience and maybe things that we'll see change in the future.
Well, let's start with some numbers.
I like it. I like it.
This is our 12th episode, and in that time, 60 hours of prep time, that would be about 5 hours per episode, to deliver about 12 hours of recording time. And then that leads to about 96 hours of editing time. I'm sure you've probably done more. We'll call it 100, 100 hours of editing time with you with that black cloth over your head, looking at the screen.
When you say that number out loud, it's kind of nauseating, honestly.
Late at night with coffee, and who knows what you got in there to keep you going.
Exactly.
And then that all comes out to delivering 210 minutes, which is about 3.5 hours of content.
Really, I think something too that I would like to highlight about why we really started this podcast is because, you know, a lot of content in the industry can be a little bit difficult to digest sometimes in terms of supply chain. Right. And we're here to spice it up. And I think we've done exactly that, you know, really bringing a more of a friendly theme and energy to the discussion. And you know, not everyone has to always know what's going on 24/7. It's kind of we're highlighting those things that are different elements of mystery.
To the vast majority of people out there, what they care about is that end result. Wow, how did that package get to me? And that was great. So we try and keep it at that level just to retain people's interest and let them know that, yeah, it is cool. It's a happening industry. Supply chain is a cool thing to be in.
Yeah.
And when you look at the workforce, especially people coming out of college, and then also people who are already in the workforce, working at Amazons, working at warehouses, and you look at the freight industry, all the truck drivers out there, and then you go to the retailers, the supermarkets, the people who are stocking. This is where it really happens, and that's what it matters. We can get into all the theory and math and engineering. For our audience, we want to make them excited about it and really curious. And because of that curiosity, it elevates the whole industry and makes us all better. So, you know, when we think about that, perspectives from the end customer experience, we had a few episodes that covered that. You know, and we started with how our CEO and president there, they started back in the 40s, and it's coming up on 75 years now of our pan company, how they started as just being really simple conveyor and forklifts and very manual, and how their perspective, how it's evolved, and how DCPerform came to be.
Yeah.
And here we are a year later. I remember in episode 2 when we had a mother on who was taking her school child back to school for the first time since COVID and describing what that experience was like and having to buy school supplies.
Yep.
And also the way schools had changed in the expectations of what they have to do. And I guess what really caught my interest was growing up and raising our kids. It was, hey, you had this list of products that you bought and you went out and got it. But now the stuff that the schools are mandating, how she talked about, hey, you don't just buy pencils and pens and books for your kids anymore. It's for more than them. It's also to help the kids who don't have the financial resources at home to do that. And I thought that was an interesting twist. And what really struck out to me was how she described that the bus routes had been extended where the kids had to walk further to those bus stops, sometimes a half mile, and lots of them unsupervised. And you think about it, without the advent of the iPhones today, how would parents feel secure with their kids doing that? In episode 5, we got into that holiday experience.
Yeah.
And how do we supply chains plan for that? And it was great having Jim Hull on, who described the whole buying process of how holiday shopping for the retailers and the manufacturers starts a year in advance.
Mm-hmm.
They are using comp sales from previous year to justify their forecasts for buying for the next holiday season, but also thinking about what's going on culturally that aligns with that, and almost having to take a swag at this is what I think it's going to be and make the commitment early, January, February, so manufacturing is done in time, so things get shipped to the stores in time to be available during the peak holiday season starting after Labor Day.
And something interesting from that discussion with Jim was a lot of the data around how they figure out what their target customer is wanting and the volume that they need to supply. A term that I've done a little research on myself is called social commerce. Mm-hmm. So it's something that our society has evolved into, meaning that we are always shopping and making purchasing decisions based off of what we see on social media. 87% of shoppers say that they utilize social media before making a purchasing decision. 87%.
2 decades ago,
Yeah.
where it was influenced by radio, TV, print, and it was all controlled by the retailers and the manufacturers. Now it's taken out of their hands. It is a voice, it's an opinion of the end customer that you're seeing that's driving trends and ultimately sales and profits. There's that expectation, right? Okay, I've bought into this notion of a product because someone influenced me into it.
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to go to a store? Am I going to order online? Well, I'm going to order online.
Mm-hmm.
So then you backtrack, how do we get it to the customer? And that's where that episode that we did about the last mile delivery, how that's a whole new thing now. 48 hours is considered a great turnaround time. Then Amazon flipped the game. Hey, we're going to do it in 24 hours. Now it's getting to the point where people are seeing it in hours. Mm-hmm. And so when Gina Anderson was on talking about how micro centers are these small little warehouses that are closer to the source of where people are ordering from, that's enabling that to happen. And we're seeing that as a growing trend now. But the impact on freight costs to be able to do that, it's no longer the long haul freight. It's the deliveries from those micro centers to the stores. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to be long, definitely within my career life. Mm-hmm. It's just a matter of time until their drones are just going to be dropping things at people's door. But there are things that, as an industry, do that you can call like the heart of the supply chain. And when we think about those, we think about how we give back. So that episode we did around Thanksgiving with United Food Bank and how they're servicing the underprivileged in the communities and delivering products to them and really providing a retail experience for them. What was the takeaway that you got from that?
I think that one takeaway is that it made me feel a lot better knowing that there are businesses in the food industry that are taking their leftover or imperfect produce and actually doing something with it. That is being repurposed and given to someone that they don't care what it looks like. They just, they need food. They need to take care of their families.
Right. Yeah, I'd agree with you. And then, the other side of it was they don't do this with the intention of making it something that they're dependent on. The whole idea is to give somebody a lift up who's going through a hard time. Their ultimate objective is to have people not come back ever again. Let's talk about the other heart piece, the sustainability.
Yeah.
When we think about sustainability and the environment and how logistics is moving product and how it creates manufacturing and consumer waste, and how is that handled to be environmentally safe and also to help give back the resources. We had Kendon Young on from ASU, who was a subject matter expert, and he gave us a great vision of the local micro ecosystems of the food providers, for example, for ASU campus, and how they're reusing the leftover raw materials of food, water resources, and also they're building it into the campus.
One major takeaway I got from that conversation that I had never thought of before is that businesses actually create plans and structure. They build all of that around sustainability because of those incentives that they get from the government,
Right.
which I thought was so fascinating. Like, you're not going to get the funding unless you're aligned with a sustainability initiative.
And we're seeing it both in the public sector, where governments and municipalities for site selection and building and also tax benefits are including it, but also in the private sector. The largest companies in the world, the Microsofts in the world, are requiring and mandating that their provider companies are aligned with their corporate social responsibility programs, and sustainability is a big one. If you're going to do business with some of the larger third-party logistics providers, they're requiring that material handling and integration companies consider the design to meet their requirements for their sustainability initiatives.
You've been in the industry for quite some time. What kind of role did sustainability play in decision making for businesses 15, 20 years ago? What would you say in the industry?
There was an awareness of it,
Yeah.
but it wasn't a practice because there was no economic incentive or penalty associated with it. So it was more of an awareness, and it was kind of oh, wow, you're progressive. But how does that impact the bottom line? Then it started changing once the investors and the large companies started mandating it, where there was an economic, not value, but a penalty. And then that helped to invigorate the industry that said, hey, we need to design these types of solutions now and enable that. And now there really is a value proposition. There is a return on investment in these things that didn't exist 15 to 20 years ago.
And then on the customer side, they are now demanding that people get behind that. From a study from IBM, 73% of Americans would quit buying from a business that ignores climate change. 92% of buyers trust brands that are environmentally or socially responsible.
We touched on that in episode 10, where we
Yeah.
did that bet on the house, bet on transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole series of master classes was about how transformation is driving the supply chain industry.
Yeah.
And that was a key element of that. Consumer and the desires for social activism through how they purchase, and that leads us to the next group of topics we had, which was generational change. And in that transformation masterclass we had, you had a great session.
Yeah.
And with Al.
Yep.
From Al Ritchie from Waller and Associates. Talk to us a little bit about that.
The generational shift in buying power has probably been one of the most common themes in all of our episodes, I would say. Ultimately, there is a huge shift in generational buying power happening right now. The younger generation, my generation, Gen Z, millennials, our buying power is so valuable. The way that we interact with businesses and our perception of them really impacts the way that businesses perform and their success. If there's ever bad press on something, my generation is the first one to be like, okay, we're aborting that product. We're not going to use them. We don't want to be associated. But then if we hear that a business is doing something really great, we praise them, we support them. But then ultimately, we're all about experiences. We're attracted towards brands that are bringing us more than just something that's a tangible item. We want something that can have a full experience with, that we can share with friends and family.
There was a time when the baby boomers were you. When I think of how do I use my disposable income as being a baby boomer, it is now all health-related type products, right? It's whether it's extending our lives through spending our money on that type of things, or something that's more legacy-related that's left behind when we go. That type of spend is totally different than consumer purchasing, which is the window that you're in, which is what drives most of our economy, and our supply chains really have to support that. So this is also the advantage of technology and data, huge part of our industry, right? And how technology is used to capture information, data is used to analyze it, and from the analysis of that data, come out with rational outcomes that you say, this is why this is happening. We get insights from that data that helps us then improve. And that didn't exist. So artificial intelligence is all about aggregating all that data, creating the output of that data, and then having actionable insights from it. Machine learning is saying, hey, this is what the data says, and this is standard, normal. But wait, there's this exception here. That's not quite what we expected. Wait, that's different. Wait, that's different. artificial intelligence can look at those exceptions and start to normalize it in the process and make that exception part of standard process and be even more efficient. And you are on the cutting edge right now, and through your purchasing and the way you buy and the way you're thinking of that technology, and the next generation behind you, it's all going to be seamless to them, which is scary and good.
Well, let's look into that, 1L Greg's crystal ball.
Oh,
Where do you see ML and AI going in the future? How is that going to impact warehousing and the labor management and the workforce? And
first, we know that legislation can never keep up with technology. In some ways, that's good because it allows technology to evolve in its own organic way. But that's also dangerous because if it goes down paths that ultimately hurts society and humanity, let's just assume that there's a balance, that we find this balance where leading technology can always be aligned with legislation to keep us safe. If that happens, some things you can expect to see. When you think of that big package that was just approved, the big spending bill that was just approved by Congress, in the transportation sector particularly, you think of our freeway systems, where in the future they could very well be an additional lane in highways that's for nothing but extended multiple freight carriers pulled by robotic cab. And these could be 3, 4, maybe 5 trailers long versus now where there's a regulation where you can only have 2. So imagine what that means efficiency-wise. And then where you see these weigh stations, those weigh stations have either they add additional capability or convert them to drop-off points. So now you have robotic freight coming in and dropping multiple containers at these sites. Now you have smaller trucks coming in from the city, man-driven, some might be robotic, to pick up these containers and deliver them to the final points of origin. That would be a dramatic change in your career, in your time.
yeah.
And then another that you'll see right now is where we're starting to experiment with robotics in the warehouses. That robotics is going to happen in the retail outlets. And we're starting to see it already at some of the higher-end retailers. You see where you can go in and just take a product, walk out the door with it, and it scans, it knows what it is, and it charges your card as long as you're registered with that business. That's going to become more commonplace.
Yeah.
Think of the grocery package line, how that can be automated, where when you come through and if you don't have that walkthrough capability, where they still have the lines, where there's experimentation on being able to eliminate the grocer from the bagger and the checkout clerk. And all those things are coming. And that's just in that industry. And then you think about biopharma, you think about manufacturing. It's already there. It's just how long is it going to be before it's normal, where jobs are going to be impacted. So we got 1 year behind us. What does next year look like?
I know.
What's on the horizon? What are we going to do?
I mean, I think that something we've kind of decided is data.
Right.
We got to move forward with data.
And, we think about this year, we focused on the end customer experience, episodes of the heart related to the supply chain, the heart of our industry, and then certain perspectives and transformational change. I agree. Next year, we'll be focusing a lot on data, the labor, what's going on in labor, AI, ML, and still, generational change is going to be there. I think we label it as something, but it's just a constant evolution. I also think that we're going to have some interesting guests. Well, we know we're going to have some interesting guests. We're not going to let the cat out of the bag, but we're going to have some interesting guests, and we're also going to have more hosts.
Yes.
I think it's going to be great to have other hosts come in and share their perspectives, and it will add some variety and some interesting conversation.
Yeah, we've got an awesome team at DCPerform, and they've got lots of knowledge and insight to share, so should be cool.
And a big thank you to our supporters, the people that have joined us on these podcasts, the industries that support us, the leadership team at DCPerform and our parent company. They've been phenomenal in supporting this, and we're really excited about what we're going to do this coming year. Yeah. And also a special shout out to AZ Pod Studio, the best studio ever for recording our podcast. The team, Emmanuel, Martin, Ben, you guys have all been such a great support, and
We love you guys, so thank you.
And they're growing too, by the way. New offices.
Yes, yeah. So we'll have a new studio next episode. We might.
Have a new swankiness behind this.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, Lionel, this has been awesome. Happy 1 year.
Yes, happy 1 year to you. It's been a pleasure working on this with you, and I'm looking forward to next year.
Yeah, same here. All right, let's do it.
All right, 1 year.